I wrote this journal entry on July 15th, 2020. I just finished watching 12 Years a Slave. It is amazing and beautiful, and I cried almost all throughout and a while after as well. Cameron held me while I cried, as he always does. He's so good to me, and I'm so thankful for him. He feels like home, like healing. There's so much to say about the movie, especially since it is based on a true story. Words really cannot give justice to the pain, sorrow, loss, hope, bravery, evilness, goodness, and so much more that story tells, but I will do my best. The movie ends on a hopeful-ish note, as Solomon eventually does become free again. But we know that many individuals' story did not end that way, and that is a terrible truth that I try to remember, terrible as it is. When I watch movies or read books or even just think about stories in history like this one, stories of human cruelty from one human to another, I always ask myself this question, among others. What is it that keeps a human being going under the most dreadful, unthinkable circumstances? What is it that stops a person from killing themselves when they are in a situation so terrible it seems death might be better? Undoubtedly, many have killed themselves under these circumstances. But for me, that's understandable. Tragic, terrible, sorrowful, all of those things, but understandable. Meaning, it's not a mystery to me why someone would kill themselves when life gets to a certain unbearable point. To me, the mystery is how anyone doesn't. How did they not? How did any slaves not give up when they were treated so inhumanely? How did any Jews and prisoners not give up in the concentration camps? How did anybody not give up in the gulags? That is the mystery. But I do have a guess. A tired one, but I think a truthful one. Hope. Hope, I think, is the belief that things will get better in the absence of any evidence that it will. That's why I don't like the term false hope. False hope is hope. And hope is not false. If anything, it is perhaps the most powerful tool any and every human being can have. Now, I don't want to pretend like it's easy to have hope. It certainly is the opposite of easy, particularly for people and circumstances like I named. I'm just stating that it is always there. There also might be something different than hope, though, that keeps people going in unthinkable circumstances. It's more complicated, I think, but I think it might also play a role. I recall an important message in the book Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and a Holocaust survivor. In his book, he explains what, in his belief, kept prisoners in the camps going who were lucky. I understand none of these circumstances were lucky, but who were lucky enough to have not been immediately murdered and who worked in the camps. Frankl says a few things, but one of those was meaning. Frankl stressed all throughout his book the importance, significance, and essentialness for meaning in the life of every human being. He explains, I think, that taking a responsibility among yourself, in whatever form that takes, is how meaning can be found. And he argues that until your very last breath, there is always meaning to be found. A Holocaust survivor argues this. I guess what I wonder here is, what if slaves could somehow know that this would be their life until they died? What if the prisoners knew that they would be prisoners until they died, in a hypothetical situation? Would some of them still choose not to give up on life? Or would a life like that be so terrible that it would, if it were known for a fact that their circumstances would not change, ever, it would cause them to kill themselves? I don't know, but then again, if they somehow find meaning in these situations, doesn't that sort of change what the situation is? Not to say that the circumstance is good, but that finding meaning changes how a person sees a situation, if only slightly. I don't know, and I don't pretend to understand what it's like to have gone through these terrible, inhumane circumstances. But I try to think about them and understand and empathize as much as it is possible to. Perhaps it is a mistake to bring hypotheticals into a thought dialogue about what would occur in a real-life scenario under real-world laws and truths, meaning it is not possible in the real world to know for certain how a situation ends. I think maybe my hypothetical cuts out the essential parts of whatever the answer to my questions are. Maybe both hope and meaning are necessary under these circumstances. Maybe one cannot exist without the other. I think that might be the case. One thing is for certain, though. Hope is of the most precious and powerful gifts of the human spirit. That I have witnessed.